Is a British Labour MP serving Edinburgh South. He joins me now live from Abington Green outside the UK Houses of Parliament, and it is good to have you here on what is still a very eventful evening. I mean, we listened to your leader today. I listened to him in Parliament, Keir Starmer. He was very lawyerly setting out the case against the Prime Minister and quite succinctly made the point that the Prime Minister seemed to never learn from his mistakes despite repeated professions of contrition. But I ask you, how is your party any more than a bystander at this point? Because you seem to be ineffective of really getting the results that even his own party wants. Everyone, or many people I should say, seem to want the Prime Minister to step aside, but he continues to hold on to power.
Well, it's very difficult to get rid of a British Prime Minister, but we've been calling for his resignation now since the start of this crisis back in December of last year, and it's been repeated lies, it's been repeated scandals, and the last straw, of course, was this weekend when he lied about appointing the Deputy Chief Whip to a senior government position who had been embroiled in sexual harassment claims. This is a Prime Minister that doesn't start a sentence and finish the same sentence without some kind of lie or bluff and bluster in the middle, and it's really his own party should have taken him out a long time ago, and the very fact it's taken him this long and they're still unable to remove him from office says much more about the Conservative Party than it says about anything else.
But your lead line off the top that there isn't much you can do, it certainly lends to a certain amount of impotence in British politics, which is unfortunate given the crises that Brits are facing. I mean, your own party mentions it all the time, right? Brits are wondering in the winter if they need to heat or eat. What can you do to actually affect any kind of a change here, especially because even if Boris Johnson leaves, right, this is still the Conservative Party that has a hefty majority to wield in Parliament.
Well, that's why we're calling for a general election, because if the Prime Minister doesn't think he should resign and leave office, then we think that the British people should have that choice to make that decision and have a general election. But if that is not the case, one of the things we've been saying right since the very start is that you're right. There's huge issues in the country at the moment. There's our international relations, which are at their lowest ebb ever with Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, embarrassing us on the international stage. We have a cost of living crisis, we have an inflation crisis, we have low growth, we have high taxes, and we're in stagnation at the moment in terms of our economy. And you're right to suggest that most people in the country will be worried about how to pay their bills, and many will be making the choice about whether or not they can afford to heat or eat, and that's really unacceptable. And the key point being that whilst you have a Prime Minister who spends all of his time and his cabinet ministers spend all of their time trying to save his job, then Parliament behind me is in paralysis. And a good example of that will be tomorrow when many of the public bill committees that sit behind us to scrutinise legislation have been cancelled because the government has no more ministers to be able to take that business through the House of Commons. So that shows you the paralysis, and we can only break that paralysis by either replacing the government fully through an election or replacing the Prime Minister with someone else.
And yet your leader has not shown to have great popularity with the British public so far. In the committee meeting, you said that Boris Johnson, not you, but the MPs, Labour MPs, said that, you know, Boris Johnson was held up by enablers. Those are the enablers who will inevitably stay in government right now. What does your party hope to offer, really, in the days and weeks to come? Because we could be very far from a general election still.
Well, it's up to us to do three things. One is to hold this government to account and continue to make the case for a general election. The second thing is to put forward our policy ideas to resolve this crisis. And indeed, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor took on Labour's idea of a windfall tax on the oil and gas profits in order to help people with their energy bills. That's now government policy. We've been promoting that now for over a year, and it's now up to us to persuade the British people that if they've turned away from this Conservative Party, that they should be backing the Labour Party. Keir Starmer's done an incredible job since the low ebb of the 2019 general election, when the Labour Party got its worst result in 100 years and pulled it back to be well ahead in the polls. And if there was a general election today, on the average of polling numbers over the last 6 months, we'd be entering government with a very sizeable buffer. So it's really important for us to continue to make the case, to the Conservative MPs to remove this Prime Minister and try and bring some dignity and respect back to our Parliament, our democracy, and the great office of Prime Minister.
Yeah, and as some of our people have noticed on the air, many allies looking on with dismay in terms of the state of British politics at this point in time. Ian Murray, we're going to leave it there for now, but thanks so much. And